Hello, Neovim Conf. This is Famiu. Last year I did a talk on options and you guys loved it. So this year I'm back to annoy you guys again. So the talk of this title is Gaining a Command of Commands. It's supposed to be a deep dive into Neovim 6 commands. Hope you guys will enjoy it. Without further ado, let's get started. Let's talk a bit about me first. So I'm Famiu Haque. I've been a Neovim contributor since 2021. I have been a part of Neovim's GitHub organization since 2020. I am the creator and ex-maintainer of kline.nvim, which is a status line plugin for Neovim. I also authored many Neovim features such as global status line, WinBar, user in command, nvim cmd, and nvim parse cmd. All of that was me, and there's some other things too, but that's not worth mentioning. I spearheaded the Neovim option refactors and Xcommand refactors. So the two major parts of the Neovim code base, which I have refactored and I'm still refactoring. I'm currently working on Neovim full time on refactoring options code. And if you want to follow me on social media, I have a GitHub Famiu. I have a Twitch, YouTube, and Blue Sky. So if you use Twitter, that means you're insane, first of all. But if you use Twitter, and I do have a Twitter too, but I'm not gonna share it here because I don't plan on being active on it. But if you're a sane person and I've moved to Blue Sky, you can follow me there. So things I plan to cover in this talk. I'm gonna talk a bit about what X commands are, what interfaces for creating and executing X commands are right now, what it used to look like 2 years ago, and before I did some improvements. Then I'm going to talk about what improvements I exactly did. And then, lastly, I think the most important part of this, I'm going to talk about possibilities, what X commands could look like. And so, let's get started. Let's talk a bit about what X commands are first. So, if you've used Neovim, I'm sure you're familiar with X commands. So, X commands are basically commands you type in Neovim's command line window to do any kind of operation or action. So if you do echo hello world, it prints hello world to the command line. Colon write, which writes the current buffer. If you do colon huall exclamation mark, it exits Neovim, which I didn't even know that was possible. So if you ever want to exit, or you could nuke your PC from orbit, that works too. I actually prefer that. So let's discuss the anatomy of an X command. So firstly, I drew this cute little graph. I drew this cute little graph so you can see what an X command looks like. So firstly, as you can see, an X command takes a range. It can be a range of lines, buffers, windows, whatever. So an X command can take a range, and then you have the command itself, the command name, and then you have this exclamation mark here, which is optional. It's called the command bang, and it's used to mean that you're gonna force the command to do something. So if you do colon q or colon quit, it quits the current window. But if it's modified, then it won't do that. So if you do colon quit exclamation mark or colon quit bang, then it forces the window to close even if it is modified. So this, when you see this exclamation mark, it basically means force some kind of action. And then you have the count. So some commands can take a count to repeat the command multiple times. So for example, let's take the join command. So if you do join 5, join with a count of 5, it will repeat that command 5 times. So that basically means joining 5 lines together. Then you have this plus plus opt argument, which some commands basically support a way to set some options for that specific command. So like if you do write plus plus enc equals UTF-8, that basically means you're setting the encoding to UTF-8 for that command. And then you have the command arguments. I don't think that needs much explanation. Commands can take a set of arguments. That's about it. So let's get started with the main points of the talk. So first thing I want to discuss Xcommand interfaces. So there's two different things you can do with Xcommands. You can create them and you can execute. So for creating Xcommands with Vim script, you have this command. So this basically creates an Xcommand. And as you can see, this example command, it basically creates a command named hello, which just prints its first argument after hello. And then with the Lua interface, you have nvim create user command, which allows you to do the same thing. So the code on the bottom and the top basically the same thing. One's in Vim script and one's basically the difference. And then you have interfaces for executing X commands. So how do you execute an X command? Firstly, you have the command line window, which I guess you already know. You press colon on Neovim, it opens the command line, on which you can type command and execute it. But apart from that, you have the execute command in Vim script, which allows you to execute a command from Vim script, and it actually allows capturing the output of a command as well. And then you have the Lua interfaces, which there's currently 3 different interfaces for executing commands through Lua. It's a bit confusing, but I plan to take you through it later in this talk. But for now, you just need to know that there's 3 ways of executing a command through Lua. Is .nvim command, which takes a string, .nvim exec2, which takes a string, and an options dictionary. And then you have nvim cmd, which takes a structured input. So let's talk about what the issues with X commands were in the past. What was so wrong with the old X command interface? So when I say old, I specifically mean this nvim command and nvim exec. So I don't include nvim cmd, is not included since it's a new interface. So what was wrong with the old interfaces? Basically, there was no way to parse an X command into a structured format. So X command, as you can see, they use a string. So you only could pass a string. So you couldn't parse this string into a structured format to make sense of it. There was no way of doing that. And you couldn't add incremental command preview to the defined commands. So if you created a command as a user, you could not do incremental preview. Like, for example, the built-in substitute command, if you enable the in command option, it allows you to incrementally see the changes of the command before you even execute it. That was not possible with user commands until the changes I made. Thirdly, there was no way to programmatically execute X commands using a structured format. So this ties in directly with point number 1, that if you have like a structured format, so like of a dictionary containing the command range, the command name, the command arguments, you couldn't use that to build a command string and then execute the X command. So summarize all of those 3 points above. It can basically summarize by saying that X command interfaces in general only supported strings. So everything you did with X commands, it had to be a string. You couldn't parse it or put it in a structured format. So how do we solve this? How do we solve these? Let's think about it for a bit. So anything we do with X commands has to involve strings. So naturally, the thing we should try to do is allow structured input and output. So we should be able to take an X command string and then parse it to make sense of it, and then modify it, and then use that to execute the modified command. Basically, well, the solution is to add new interfaces for X commands that will allow parsing of X command strings into a structured format that can easily be manipulated, and converting the structured format back into an X command that can be executed, and then hooking into Neovim's X command preview system to allow incremental command preview for user command. So here comes the first star of our show, Nvim parse CMD. So if you remember the introduction page I showed you a bit earlier, Nvim parse CMD is something I worked on, and it was introduced in Neovim 0.8. Thanks to Nvim parse CMD, it was possible for the first time to parse X commands into a structured format. So as you can see in the code example below, it basically uses Nvim parse CMD to parse this command, which is 20,25 join exclamation mark, and then this Vim will parse range. It basically, you can get the range from it, the command name from it, and other command attributes from it. So you might be wondering, okay, so what does that mean? Okay, you can parse the command, so but what can you do with it? That doesn't really mean much if you can just parse the command and do absolutely nothing with that information. So Nvim parse CMD was a great first step, but it was only half of the battle. So we still had some things left to do. Still couldn't still only could parse an X command, but that was useless since you couldn't really do much with it. And there was still no way to convert the structured format back into an X command. So once you got the X command and then you modified the structure, and couldn't turn it back into an X command or execute it. And while command parsing did allow hooking to the cmd line changed auto command. So cmd line changed, didn't know, it's basically an auto command that is called whenever the command line is changed, and you can actually get the current value of the command line from it. So Nvim parse cmd did allow actually getting the command lines and then parsing it to get the structure of the command, some details out of it. So it did allow this, but it was still very complicated to add user command previews. So here comes the second part of the puzzle. So Nvim CMD, which is basically the other side of the Nvim parse CMD. It was also introduced in Neovim 0.8. It allowed executing a command with the same structure as the output of Nvim parse CMD. So let's say you take the output of Nvim parse CMD code block below. Local cmd equals this basically gets the command, and then this modifies the command range, and then the last line, very important, executes the new command with the new range. So as you can see, what we have done here is very, very interesting and very important for plugin developers. So what we have done is we've taken a command with one attribute and then parsed it and then changed some of these attributes and then executed the new command. All of this without any string manipulation. So this is huge for plugin developers. So what Nvim CMD enables, I want to talk a bit about that. So as I've already said, it allows passing commands to X commands in a structured format. So you could specify the range, the arguments in a structured way, that sort of thing. It removes the need to escape arguments with a space. So before, if you had a command that could take multiple arguments and one of these arguments had a space in them, you had to escape that space with a backslash. With Nvim CMD, you don't have to do that since args is an array, so you can cleanly separate the arguments without having to escape anything with spaces. Then it also allows making certain commands interpret special characters in ways they otherwise would not. For example, using bar inside command arguments with a command bar attribute. So what the command bar attribute basically means is that it means that the bar character indicates the end of a command. So before it was not actually possible to a bar character uh, in the inside of a command that has had this attribute. So NVIM made that possible. And then lastly, it allows for specialization of vim.cmd. It allows indexing it. So instead of .cmd hello world or vim.cmd write my file, then do vim.cmd echo hello world, and then vim.cmd write. First argument is my file.txt and then bang. So as you can see, the code at the bottom looks much neater. It also looks very ergonomic. So this is what NVIM CMD enabled. But you might be wondering, what about command preview? What about that? So the last thing I did with X commands in Neovim 0.8 is to allow hooking into the command preview system. So we added the preview attribute for nvim create user command. Nvim create user command is the interface for creating X commands in Lua, as I've shown earlier. So that actually has an attribute, preview attribute, which basically allows you to pass a function which executes a bunch of stuff, which allows you to preview a command. So the user can actually see the changes of your command without having to execute it. It completes basically the holy trinity of major changes to the X command ecosystem. It allows plugins to provide user previewable X commands. So if you want to see that in action, I have a fantastic plugin to show you guys. It's named ink.rename.nvim. Please check it out. It's awesome. It also perfectly showcases what this thing is useful for. And lastly, and this is actually very important, it opens the door to write command preview for more built-in commands in Lua. So right now we mostly only have command preview for substitute, and before, if you had to add command preview for more built-in options, we'd have to do it in C through C code. But what this preview functionality enables is that we can now add command preview systems in Lua and not have to deal with any of the messy C code at all, which is huge, because it widens our horizon and it allows us to expand the set of commands which can be previewed, set of built-in commands. So the issues with command preview is great and all, but it still has many flaws. So let's talk about those for a bit. So there are some things I overlooked when implementing command preview, and some things I overcomplicated a bit. So preview callback for user command has many responsibilities. So to slow things down, to discuss it a little bit, preview callback for user commands has lots of responsibilities. So it has to change the buffer, the target buffer where the command is executed. It has to change the contents of the buffer to match the result of that command before it's even executed. So it has to change the contents of the buffer, and then it has to highlight those changes. So it has to add highlighting to those changes, and then it has to also deal with other state related stuff. So it leads to a lot of complexity and boilerplate. And then the command preview often has to make the same changes to the command itself. So let's say we have a special command which substitutes one thing with another thing. So let's say we make a tree sitter based substitution plugin. So the preview of that command would have to do essentially the same changes as the command itself does, which may lead to code duplication. So I mean, you could same underlying function to implement those changes, and have the actual command and the command preview both be wrappers of that function, which can work, but it isn't guaranteed that you can do that with everything. So it can still lead to code duplication. There's still a lot of places where that can happen. And then previewing the effects of more complex commands that modify more than contents of buffers is not actually possible. So if we have a command that say that modifies the window layout, and can't actually see effects of that command until you execute it. So you can't actually preview those kinds of commands. That's actually why we don't have a built-in preview for the norm command, for example. And then the user still has to manually define a preview function, even for simple commands, even for commands that do very simple things like remove trailing white space from a file, which the user still has to define a preview function for. It can lead to a lot of unnecessary effort. And then lastly, extremely verbose for common use cases. So if you use NVIM CMD for command preview stuff, sometimes you need to. It can actually lead to a lot of verbosity in NVIM CMD actually, since it's supposed to take in the output of NVIM parsing, lead to a lot of unnecessary stuff in it. So let's talk about what the future could look like for X commands. So these are some ideas I have. I'm not guaranteeing that all of them are going to be implemented, but these are just some things I plan to work on. So firstly, I want to allow setting preview to true in NVIM create user command. So allowing preview to true, the Boolean value in NVIM create user command, should automatically generate a preview function for simple commands. So let's say your command does something simple like substitute text or remove trailing white spaces or something like that. You should be able to tell NVIM to like automatically generate a div of the buffer's contents, highlight the div of that buffer. So that's something I'm planning to do in the future. And then later I'm gonna try to add command preview for more built-in X commands. So the global command, the normal command, etc. I want to add command preview for those, if that's possible. I know it's definitely possible for global, but for normal there are some complexities, since it can do a lot more than just modify a buffer. And then, which ties in nicely with the third point, which is make Neovim store more of the editor state to allow rolling back to more complex changes made by a command preview, which would allow previewing the effects of more complex commands. So let's say command preview opens a new tab or opens a new window or something, or uh, adds text to another buffer. So you should be able to preview that well without destroying or breaking the state in Neovim. That's also planned. And fourth, I want to simplify the command preview interface by reducing responsibilities. So right now, a command preview interface has to do a lot of things. It has to add highlight, add text to the preview window. It has to modify the content of the buffer. A lot of stuff. It has a lot of stuff, and I basically want the user to be able to just turn a list of diffs across lines and just make Neovim generate all the text and highlights and all that. And then lastly, I want to do internal refactors, make NVIM CMD more performant than string-based command execution. Right now, what NVIM CMD, how it's basically implemented in C code, is it basically takes the structured command and then rebuilds the string, stuff like passing the structure directly. The reason that's done is due to complexities in the C code. A lot of C code still relies on commands being strings, so this would take a lot of time to refactor and change. But the hope is that we can make commands take those structured inputs directly without having to convert them back to a string, which would theoretically allow them to be more performant than the string-based alternatives. So this is basically what I have planned for the future of X commands. So, to summarize this talk, X command interfaces in the past relied entirely on strings and were not very flexible, as we've discussed earlier. Uh, and in the past few years, Neovim has new interfaces for X commands that allow parsing and executing X commands in a structured format, which allows us to be more flexible with it, do more interesting things. Especially, this is important, especially for plugin authors, who might want to parse the command and modify some things and then execute the modified command. The introduction of command preview for user commands has also made it possible for plugins provide a more interactive experience for users. So now plugins, if plugin provides a command, it could uh, also provide a preview callback and make the plugin more interactive, as we've already shown with the ink rename example earlier. In the future, we could see more improvements to X commands, specifically command previews, to make them more user-friendly. So, as I've said, I plan to simplify things a lot more and make it much easier to write a preview function for a command. And hopefully, I hope that it encourages more plugin developers to add command previews to built-in plugin commands. But wait, there's more. So I've already alluded to this, but let's talk about this. Adding these command things in Vim CMD and in parsing this required refactoring a lot of legacy C code, so a lot of it. And since X commands were theirs is from Vim, they were ported from Vim, a lot of old Vim code was also refactored. So refactoring legacy C code is traumatizing, but it also plays a huge role in allowing us to add new features to Neovim. And I'm currently working on refactoring parts of the code base full time. So if you want to show support, consider donating to the project at one of the links I'm going to share below. And who knows, you might just end up sponsoring my therapy. So it's github.com/sponsors/neovim or https:/opencollective.com/neovim. Lastly, I want to thank the Neovim core team for their hard and often thankless work on improving Neovim and reviewing, merging my contributions. Like the amount of effort that they have to put into all of this is amazing, and I can't thank them enough for it. And I also need to commend them for creating such a contributor-friendly environment. Like Neovim has been so friendly to me. It has been so to contribute to this project. And if you're on the fence, if you're considering contributing to Neovim, I would highly recommend it. And yeah, if you want to contribute, just get started. Like the core team is extremely friendly and welcoming. So if you can work on something, even if it's something small like a documentation improvement, I would suggest contributing, and maybe you can become a contributor like me. And then I would also like to thank the Neovim community for their feedback and contribution, as well as the love and support they've shown me. Like the last year's talk I did, you guys loved it and showed a lot of support. And I kind of went on an angry rant last year. This year I tried to stay a bit more calm. So thank you guys for the love and support you have shown me. It genuinely means a lot to me. To those who have financially contributed to Neovim full time, I'd like to thank you guys as well, because without you guys, it would be impossible for me to work on Neovim full time like I'm doing. And I would like to thank the organizers of Neovim Conf 2024 for giving me the opportunities to speak. And lastly, I want to thank you, the viewer, for spending your valuable time listening to my talk. And hope you enjoyed the talk. See you guys next year, hopefully. Bye bye.